Hello and welcome to this week's video. Now, surprisingly, I'm not working on a cocktail cabinet. I'm actually going to be working on a dressing table set for my client, and I'll give you a quick run over of the dressing table as it is now, the before, what we're planning on doing to it, and then you can join me as I make it over in this video. So if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know I love a bit of decoupage. So of course there's going to be some decoupage, there's going to be some paint, there's going to be some restoration, there's going to be some upholstery, there's going to be a little bit of everything in this one. So let's take a look at it now. There you go. It's a beautiful Olympus style Queen Anne dressing table. It did come with a glass top, but I oopsied, and I'm going to need to find a way to either replace it. I'm not quite sure. That is a later me problem right now. And then we're going to be decoupaging the drawer fronts. We're going to be restoring the top. When I strip the top, my client's not sure if she wants a darker walnut wood grain, so we're going to strip the top. I'm going to spray some mineral spirits on it and send her a photo so she knows how it looks. And if she wants a darker walnut, it might be that we lay new veneer on the top. So like I said, decoupage paper on the drawer fronts. Body is being painted. I know how some people hate to paint a piece of furniture, but it is what it is. Love it or hate it, it's happening. If you have any really serious objections to it, then I would suggest clicking off this video now, because continuing to watch will make your blood boil, I'm sure. And a set of mirrors. So that's what we're working with. Oh, and the chair. I forgot the chair. That's just going to be reupholstered. Fabric undetermined as yet, but the wallpaper is like a yellow tropical jungle vibe, blue paint. So possibly yellow upholstery fabric on the chair. But yes, that's where we are right now. So let's dive into giving it a good old clean. I'm going to start with giving it a really good clean. I'll take the drawers out, remove the handles. If you want to see how I generally clean my pieces of furniture, I'll link to that video here, and you can have a look at the products and things that I use. Everything will be linked down below anyway, but check that out afterwards. So I won't bore you with all of that. I might show you a bit of the dismantling bit, and then we'll be going straight into stripping. Stripping first, then painting. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take this Paramose stripper. Now this is the water-based one, so it's water washable. I've used their chemical stripper before. It's one of my favorite. It's amazing. It just works so quickly, but this is available to trade only. So I wanted to try the water-based one because it's much better for cleanup than having to try and dispose of the chemical waste. So we're going to go in and apply a coat of that to the top and strip it back. Just gonna grab a cheap chip brush for the job. Now this one I believe is like a, oh god, gel-based consistency. So because it's water-based, it should be less toxic, but still good practice to wear gloves. So applying it pretty liberally, a thick coat, let it work its magic. Now I should have removed that first, so I'll do that quickly. The tin says to leave it for 20 minutes, so that's what we're going to do. It's got a lot thicker than when I poured it out, and I think that's obviously where it's reacting with the varnish. So I'm just going to agitate it a little bit. That's had quite a bit more than 20 minutes. So now I'm going to go in and start scraping. So this seems to have done quite a good job at removing the varnish. Right, that is looking good. So it does seem to be getting the bulk of the varnish off. And then whatever is left, I can just sand off. To tackle these edges, what I'm going to do is spray it with water, because remember this is a water washable stripper. And then I've got this little attachment on my drill, and I'm going to use that. And that seems to be doing a really nice job of cleaning up those edges. Now I'm going to take some liquid sander and I'm going to swap out for this much bigger brush head. And I'm going to spray all of the top and give that a good scrub. Right, that's had a good old scrub. Spray some water. And then wipe that down, ready to dry and do a sand. And then you can see there all the sections where the varnish hasn't come off fully. So here. And so that's why we want to sand, to remove what's left of the varnish. So you can see it's a bit splotchy. I'm going to clean the piece now. So the best way to do that is to dismantle it. Take all your drawers out. And then I'm just going to grab a pen so I can label the drawers. So I'm going to label this one left bottom, left top, right bottom, right top. And then we shouldn't have any problems getting them back in where they're meant to go. I'm going to remove the hardware now. I'm also going to pry off all these attachments, and they're normally just stuck in with nails. So if I just go gently along, and these can become quite brittle with age. So you do need to sort of just take your time. I've decided not to keep those little decals just because they're so brittle. So now it's just a case of taking all the nails out. Welcome to day 2 of this dressing table project. So yesterday I finished off, let me show you, by filling in all the little holes where the nails were with some 2-pret fine wood filler. I just had to do a bit of a repair here with some glue. This was a bit loose. That sounds right now. So first job this morning is going to be to give everything a scuff sand, and once we've scuff sanded, then we can start in with our coats of primer and 180 grit, because we're painting the body. I'm not trying to rip through the old finish down to bay wood. I just want to scuff the surface enough to give the primer something to adhere to. So 180 grit over everywhere, and probably the top as well. I'd say I'll do 180 grit because we got most of the finish off with the stripper yesterday. So I don't think it'll be much more than 180 grit to finish off what's left on there. Because I recently bought this Festool sander and sold my rotary one, I'm just trying to use up all the sandpaper that I've got. And then I can just trim that down to size. In order to prime this part, I need to separate it from the upholstered cushion. There we go. So now I can reupholster that and prime that separately. To prep the drawers for primer, I'm just going to tape off where that existing line was with that Olympus finish. And then that'll give us a clean line when we paint. And I'll do that on this side as well. Now, because there's limited room where the drawers slide in and out, I'm not going to apply primer on the drawers. I'm just going to go in with a base coat of paint, which will sit underneath the decoupage paper that we're going to do. So leave that like that. I'm not particularly worried about bleed through with this piece, so I'm just going to use my standard primer. I'm not going to waste my Zinsser on this piece particularly. if there is any sort of tan and bleed through after the first coat of this, then I can always do a second coat with the Zinzer bin. But that is pretty pricey these days, so try not to use it when it's not necessary. I've just lined that with foil so that it becomes not multi-purpose, so I can reuse it basically. And clean up is a lot easier. Just whip that out, chuck it in the bin. This is a water-based primer, this one as well, not an oil or shellac-based one. If I can get it open, that is. And I'm just going to take my foam roller and apply thin coats of the primer. I know I said I wasn't going to apply any primer to the drawers, but I've decided to just apply some on the faces, so not along the sides and edges, but just for the face front. All the places I couldn't get with the roller, I'm just going to go in with a brush. For the mirrors, I'm going to be using a spray primer, so I just want to remove the mirrors before I spray them, and that way I won't have to worry about cleaning the mirror. There's always one. Right, one down, two to go. This is why I like to keep hold of my scrap wallpaper, because you never know when you might need it. And it's good for things like spray painting hardware. It just saves having to spend money on paper when you can use something you would have just thrown away anyway. So this is the primer that I'm going to be using. And I'm just going to give everything a really light coat. Right, we're on to day 3 of the project. I did get a little distracted yesterday because I have just extended my workshop area in the building I'm in, and all my vintage home stuff is going to go in that space over there. At the moment it's in a separate room, so I was busy yesterday removing the wall there and giving that a sweep and a clean, so I'll move into there in due course. But as cocky as I was about this piece not having any bleed through, I don't know if you can see where it's slightly that yellowy orange colour. That's tannins that have bled through. So this piece has put me in my place. And the result of that is I'm going to use some Zinsabin, some good old Zinsabin, the ultimate stain blocking primer. It is shellac based, so whatever brush or roller you use, you're either going to need to clean it with mineral spirits, white spirits, or bin it. So I'm going to grab a roller, same as yesterday, tray, line it with foil, a roller, and get a coat of the Zinsabin primer on. With this being a shellac based primer, it is much thinner and it dries much quicker. I believe it's a 15-minute dry time on this one with a 14-minute recoat. But I think we're just going to need this one coat to act as a bit of insurance. However, if there is still evidence of bleed through after this one coat, then I'll go in with the second coat of the Zinza, which will be third coat of primer overall. And because it is thinner, you do have to keep a careful eye out for any drips. Just make sure you roll those out before they start to dry. The colour that I'm going to be painting the dressing table and the chair is this bobble hat, which is a lovely like teal blue, and it's by Earthborn Paints, and this is their clay paint for furniture and smaller paint projects. So I've not used it before, but it does look lovely. So we'll get this cracked open and get painting. So it says it's a quick dry formula, water-based, no nasty smells or emissions. And to apply it, I'm just going to go in with a paintbrush. This is just a zebra 2-inch angled. My water mister, so I'll mist it down, and a roller. This is just a foam roller to go over it. So apply with that, mist with water, smooth out with that, and then that should avoid any brush strokes. Usual drill, I'm not trying to achieve full coverage with one coat, just lots of thin coats and build up the coverage that way. Lots of thin coats also means each layer better adheres to the surface and the layer below it, and it'll dry quicker as well, rather than waiting for a thick goopy layer of paint to dry, which is never going to stick properly anyway. And also by priming with the Zinsabin primer, that's a really good adhesion primer as well, so that's going to stick really well to the furniture, and then this paint will then stick well to the primer. I'm not pressing hard with the roller, I'm just running it over to smooth out any of those paint strokes. Because it's a clay-based paint, it's quite thick, so to make it easier to move around, it is also good to spray water so it's not dragging along the surface. First coat is drying, or already dried on this piece. As you can see, it's quite a chalky matte finish, and that's because it's a clay-based paint. So everything has had one coat. Frame down there, and then the stool there. So I'm going to leave that all to properly dry for a couple of hours, and then coat 2 this afternoon. To apply the wallpaper to the front of the drawers, I've got my PVA glue that I'm using, fresh blade, and a brush just to apply the PVA. You don't want to use a nice brush for that. And I've lined up the drawers as they would go in the dressing table. So the drawers on the left, the middle, and the drawers on the right, because you want to have a continuous pattern across the drawers. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up and I'm going to cut it down roughly to size. So we're going to pull that back for now. And then we're going to do the first drawer. And then just on the back of the paper as well. And then just lay that down, try and line those drawers up. Okay, then we're going to cut it in half. And don't worry if there's a load of glue squeezing out, we can sort that out. You just want to make sure you've got a really good bond between the paper and the drawer. Get some tissue. And now we're going to trim the edges to the right size. And where there's excess glue, you just want to wipe that away. And now onto the middle. Now these drawers don't sit exactly flush. I believe that should be about right. It's just a tiny bit above the other drawer. I think probably, I'm not actually going to carry on with these until I can get the drawers into there to make sure that the image lines up, because if I do it outside of here, I mean outside of the dressing table, even if these are off just by a mil, it's not going to look right. So I need to put the drawers in and see how they line up. Let me do that quick. I'll move you round. So you'll be able to see what I mean now. That is left top, so that would go like that, and then this would go in here. So okay, let's carry on. And then I just need to find the pattern match to this side. No, I'm just rushing now. I'm not going to do it. Okay, so I have given everything a scuff sand and I've done little touch-ups where there was still some primer showing. So now what I'm going to do is I've got what was left in the paint can, which is probably about that much, and I've topped it up with satin varnish. So I've mixed the varnish into the paint and I'm going to apply a couple of coats of that to seal it in. I'm going to go in with the same method of applying it with the brush and smoothing it over with the roller. Just going in with the roller just to smooth that out. My next job is to work on the top. So if I just scoot you in closer, hopefully you can see here where the paint has spilled over, and purposely done this because I knew that I'd be doing the tabletop after the painting. So to get that paint over removed, I'm just going to take a little scraper. Oh. And I'm just going to run it lightly along that edge. And I'm going to go as far down so that if I was looking at this table front on, I wouldn't see any paint poking up over the lip. For the top, I'm just going to take 180 sandpaper because we've already stripped this with chemical stripper, so most of the varnish is gone. I don't want to sand right through that veneer with a more harsh grit, so we'll start with 180 and see how we go. I would say that that's done a really nice job of moving that old finish and giving it a nice smooth finish. So now I'm going to take some mineral spirits just so that my client can see what it will look like when it's got finish on it, and also get rid of that sanding dust residue. Right, so I'm just going to take a few pictures quickly so that I can send those to her. Right, and so if she wants it a bit darker, then we may have to go in with some stain if she wants a more brown undertone rather than the orange. But I'll let you know when I know. I've got some Fiddy's hard wax oil in satin and a cotton cloth, and I'm going to apply the first coat on the top, and it's just going to be a really thin, even coat just to seal in the wood fibers, and then I'll build up the layers as we go. Lots of thin coats. Drop you down there. You should be able to see. Then with the cloth, I'm just going to ball it up like that so that there's a relatively flat surface, and just going to drizzle that. And then you're just rubbing it in. I like to go initially in small circular motions just to really get it in all the wood fibers, and then I'll go with the wood grain to finish off. And you can see how this is just drinking this oil up. And what this will do, it'll also highlight anywhere where there need to be veneer touch-ups done, where the veneer's chipped away or not there anymore. And then just really working that round so there's no pooling up of that oil anywhere. And then just gonna finish off here before it starts to dry in line with the wood grain. And then I'm just going to get a little bit more oil on here. Okay, so I'm happy with that for a first coat. And then I've just got some Ziploc Sealy bags, and I'll put my cloth in there so that it doesn't dry out, and then I can use that again tomorrow when I apply the next coat. Okay, all the nails are out as far as I can tell, or staples. Oh no, there's a sneaky one there. So now let's peel this back. And right, Let me just grab the hoover. And without making too much mess, I want to try and get this all off in one go. So there's a couple of upholstery tacks there holding that in. So let's get those out. Go. Because this foam is just crumbling to pieces. Oh God, it's dusting everywhere. So that's layer 1. And there's some more upholstery tacks along here. So now we should be able to just lift that, put that straight in the bin. And then that in the bin, and then hoover. One last nail to get out. Ta-da! Okay, so now we are ready to add our foam. So this is my foam that I'm using. It's just a 2-inch standard foam block, and I'm going to cut that down to fit in between there. I'll show you now. If you would just look down here for me, please. So that section there, I'm going to cut that to fit in there. So I just need a knife. Actually, I've got a blade here which would probably do the trick. So I'm going to flip it round like that first, and that's going to be my mark for that side. So let's see how that fits. Okay, could definitely do with some extra in there. So I'm just squeezing that in there. So like that. And just cut off. So that's foam done. Remove that. Now I've got this heavy duty adhesive, so I'm going to spray that. Oh dear. Oh, that does not like that lid at all. Let's try another lid. No, it doesn't like that one. I always have this where lids break, and then, okay, I can't find another lid that's going to fit, so we're going to have to try and make this one work as best we can. No, it's, oh, everything is sticky now. Okay, I've got this repositionable one as well, which is just going to have to do. So coating all of that, and then coating this as well. Get that stuck in. Oh, everything is just super sticky now. Pushing that down so it sticks. So I'm just going to flip that like that and put something heavy on it while I go and wash my hands. There. I'll see you in 2 minutes. Right, I've moved as much of that sticky stuff off my hands as I can. Now I have got some wadding, and wadding just helps to smooth everything over. So just looks like that. And what you want to do is, I like to do a double layer of wadding. So enough to go around. So like that, because you're going to tuck it on underneath, and then go back on myself so that I can double layer. Let me check I've got enough actually. I might just have to do it that way instead. Yeah, that'll be fine. Grab the scissors and cut that down. Pop that away for another day. So now right, wadding on, and that just smooths everything out nicely. Okay, now fabric. And then get that central and then flip it over. Oh, I'm just going to hoover before I flip actually, because I don't want to flip onto dirt. So as I was saying, flip, make sure that is all out nicely and that you are central. And then I like to start by securing each side first. So you want to pull it pretty tight. Then the opposite side. Then we're going to come here. And then here. Okay, so you can see there, we've got a nice flat cushion. So now we just want to take in around, working our way along. And just remember to keep pulling as you work your way along. And then coming onto the other side and doing the same. Now, the reason I'm not worrying too much about this side being tidy is because it's going to be screwed down to the base like that, so you're not going to see any of this part. So I like to fold the corner so it's nice and neat like that. And we're going to need to get rid of some of this excess here. So right, that's nice and neat like that. Just going to cut a bit more. Of that. So that's that corner there now. And then I'm just going to do the same on this side. So what I normally do is I take that, fold a pinch down. I sort of see which way it naturally wants to fold. So, and then pull it. So I think it's going to be this way on this one. Right, so now what I want to do is cut away this excess fabric here. As you can see, that is all nicely done now. Just tidied up the underside. So now I am going to pop on the brass trim, which I think just adds a nice finish to it. Right, so I've got bits of brass trim and then the bit that I bought today, the tacks, and my little hammer. So I like to start like that. So that will be the last one that I put in because I need to finish there. So we're going to start with that one. And just pulling it tight as you go along. And just making sure to stay in a straight line. And then go around the corner. Oops, that's all of them. There, where, oh, I do not want to step on one of those. That will not be fun. Oh. Okay, so around the corner. Okay, so now this is where we join them. So one with a hole, another one with a hole, put them one on top of each other and pop that in there. What I'm going to be working on now is getting the paper onto the drawer fronts. So I've just got the drawers back in their positions. This one's already done. I just need to trim this. So let's do that first. So I'm just taking a sharp blade and I'm going to run it along . This is all fully dried, this glue, so the paper's not wet. And then what I'll do with the rest is, this is 180 grit sandpaper that I've just got on a sanding block. And don't worry about taking that paint off because we're going to touch up anyway. So I'm just running that along and then that'll give a really clean edge. There we go. Now the same with this bottom one. Okay, as you can see, those two drawers are done now. And the reason I haven't just done this with the drawers out, laid down, is because this drawer sits slightly higher than this drawer. So to get the pattern match, that's going to have to be adjusted, and it's much easier to do it in the drawers than out of the drawers. So I've got the pattern match here, and I'm just going to have to sand back some of the paint because it's sticking more than I would. Well, it's sticking. So there, that's the pattern match there. Yeah, perfect. So, oh dear. Yeah, can't have that. So pop that like that. And then I can take this out. It's all this paint in here that's causing it to stick, so I'm gonna have to scrape all of that out. But let's do this. So get the PVA and get some of that onto the drawer. And I also want to put some onto the paper. Okay, and then I've just got a little card scraper here, so I'm just going to do that. Squeeze out any of that excess glue and just make sure that's really adhered well to the drawer front with no air bubbles. Just going to cut that excess off so it sits nicely. Then just using a wipe. And then I just want to find the pattern match. So that's going to be like that. So if I slice that there. Okay, so that's going to be roughly the right size. So again, PVA. What I'm doing now is where I've sanded the edge smooth after applying the paper, I'm just going in with a thin coat of the paint just to finish it off nicely. I'm not looking for thick coverage because then the drawers will stick. So it's almost like just a watercolor effect where it's a thin coat just to give it a neat edge, and then wipe any of that paint that may have come over the top. And then I'll do that on all sides. My next job is going to be re-veneering the top. Now, my client doesn't particularly like the existing veneer that's on here. It's walnut, which she likes, but she prefers like a more brown wood burl kind of wood grain for the walnut. So I've ordered these walnut wood burl veneer sheets. They're all cut from the same tree, so they should book match quite easily. So we'll do that. This is I'll show you the existing top. So as lovely as that is, yeah, my client would prefer the wood burl. So to prep that veneer to apply, the very first step is going to be to soak it and flatten it. So I'll walk you through that step by step. The very first thing I'm going to do is take this plywood board that I've got here. So this is 1220mm by 606mm. And what I want to do is have something that is large enough for the sheets to be clamped in. So that is the base, and then the same again to sit on top of that. So I'll just mark that out to cut. And then once I've cut that one, I'll use that to template the other side. In order to flatten the veneer, I need to soften it. And to soften it, because as you can see, that's quite wavy, that wouldn't adhere nicely to the piece of furniture. So I need to take some veneer softener. This I bought off Wood Veneer Hub, and just give it a good spray. Dab off any excess. Then I'm going to flip it over and do the same again. Because I don't want this absolutely sopping wet. I just want it damp so that when we apply pressure to it in this press we've made, it will flatten. So then what I'm going to do is take some tissue roll and lay this down. And I'm going to lay this between each layer of veneer, and this will help to absorb the excess moisture. So we'll pop that down like that, and another layer on top. Now I think I'm going to need all 8 sheets of veneer for this dressing table top, so I'm going to just repeat this process. So next veneer, and I'm just going to keep going, and I'll check back in with you once all the layers are done. This is the final piece of veneer, so I'll just add my layers of tissue again. And now we'll put this piece on top and just make sure it lines up. And now what you want to do is clamp all of these edges, because you want to apply a downward pressure onto the veneer so that it flattens. Ta-da! It's been 48 hours since we popped our veneer in clamp, so let's undo it and see how flat it is. Fingers crossed. Right, let's open it up and see what we're working with. Okay, so I think I need to change the paper towel to get some more of that moisture out. So I'll pop a fresh layer of tissue down, because that is very crumpled still. So let's carefully take that, pop that in there. Take this wet tissue out. And then another layer there. I might just, it still feels a bit damp, so I won't panic just yet. I'll get another layer of tissue down. Then this layer. And actually what I'm going to do with this bottom one is I'm going to flip it so that it's dry side in and not keeping that moisture that's in the ply. So it kind of felt like I didn't have enough weight pushing out from the middle. So I need more weight in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to leave that for 24 hours and I'm going to check it tomorrow and change the paper again if I need to. Okay, so I have changed the paper out twice on this because the solution that was soaking into the paper saturated the paper. So in order to try and get it to dry as much as possible, I've just been rotating the paper out. So let's remove these clamps and see what we're working with. I also added this cross beam across here because when I was changing out the paper, the veneer was looking quite wrinkly, and I think that's because there was sort of uneven pressure across the middle as opposed to the outside. So let's see if that's helped at all. Get these out of the way. If it is still wrinkly, then there's another thing I can try, which is using a hot iron to flatten it. So we'll see how it looks and then decide from there. So there still looks to be a bit of a wrinkle in it. So you can see there the flattening's worked quite well around the outside. It's still, and I'd say changing that out wouldn't help much more. So I'm going to take all of these out and they all look about the same in terms of wrinkliness. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to work on each piece one by one, and I'm going to use this board as the base. So I've got a damp cloth, which I've run underwater and squeezed all the excess water out. And I've got an iron, not one I use for clothes, just literally the workshop iron. And I've heated that up to high. So I'm going to pop my damp cloth on there. And then I'm just gonna iron. Not too much pressure initially. Now what I've got here is just a sheet of plain paper. You could use greaseproof paper as well, and just to act as a bit of a barrier between the heat and the veneer. I'm pushing a bit more firmly now, and I'm working across and down as well. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. It's still pretty flexible. So I'm going to use it, like put it aside, and I'm going to work on the other ones. I might just hang it like that. Okay, now I'm going to take this one. I'm going to see what happens when I iron it without adding the damp cloth first, if I just go straight on with the iron. Okay, so I feel like that hasn't done as good a job as when we use the damp cloth first. So what I've done there is I'm just hanging them all once I've ironed them. holding them on here and then adding these 4 clamps just to give it a bit of weight to pull it down and straight. So, So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave those there overnight, and hopefully that'll just flatten them out a bit more. Actually, I think what I want to do is just get it a bit straighter so that there's even amount of pull on each sheet. There we go. I'll leave that for 24 hours now. These look ready to take down now. So I'll just unhook them. And now what I'm going to do is lay them out in their book match so that I have enough to cover the width and depth of the dressing table. So those will go like that. That'll go there, that will go there, and that will go there. Next step is I need to square off all these edges where they meet so that I can tape them together and it's just one straight line. So that will be the next job. So I've got some veneer tape here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark the joining edges. So there and there. And I'm going to call that 1, 2, 3, there. So you get the idea. So I can see once I've straightened them where they need to go back and what edges lap up against the others. Now I'm going to take one of these cutters that I use for when I do wallpaper, and I'm going to use that to straight cut the edges. Working on the basis that I want all the edges to line up perfectly with each other. These 2 edges here, 2 and 3, those 2 edges are going to be lined up together. So I want those to be perfectly straight with each other. So to do that, I'm going to flip that over, keeping those 2 edges together, and slide those under there. So now, in theory, when I cut these 2 edges together, they should line up perfectly with each other. I'm just using this as my straight edge and taking a blade to trim off the veneer. So now these 2 edges should line up perfectly. So we've got 1 there, 2 there, and this is 3 here. So I'll pop you over there, and as you can see, that's a pretty good match. So there's a slight bit here which I need to trim down, just there, that slightly overlaps. Okay, that's a much better fit there now. Perfect, I'm happy with that. So now we'll take number 3 and we're going to need to do the same where it meets the end of 4 here. So that's 3 and here's 4, and you can see that this is where the 2 edges meet. So these are the ones that you want to be perfect. So flip it over like that. I'll just test it first. No, those don't line up at all. So we'll slot that in now. I just had to do a little bit of trimming, but now, see that edge there? Take that off. But now, that lines up nicely as well. Right, time to pop these bits off. And like I said, I'm just going to use 120 grit just to sand that smooth. Perfect. This is the surface that we're going to be applying the new veneer to. Now, my reasoning is there is nothing wrong with this veneer, so I'm not going to be removing it. It's smooth, it's well adhered, there's no lifting, so I think this will be a fine substrate to add the new veneer to. But I may be wrong, but I think it'll be okay. So I'm just going to sand this down with 120 grit to give it some tooth, and then I'll apply the wood glue that I'm going to use, which is specifically for this veneer and applying it in the way I am. Okay, so let's test the fit. Okay, that is looking all right. The glue that I'm using is this Type Bond cold press glue. So this is specifically for gluing when you don't have like a vacuum seal or something like that. You're just using clamps to apply the pressure to the veneer. So yeah, I'm just going to use a roller to apply the glue so that it's an even coat and not too thick. From reading the instructions, I think a even thinner coat is going to be more effective. So let me grab a roller and then we can do that. I have said roller and I'm just going to work in sections. So I am doing this by eye mainly, looking at how the spread of the glue is and keeping that uniform. And making sure that absolutely every single millimeter has glue over it. Otherwise, you'll have air pockets. So my understanding is if you're using raw Burl veneer like I am, then contact cement is not ideal. Contact cement is good for when you've got pre-rolled veneers, flatter veneers, my understanding from the research I did. But if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. Making sure to get right up to those edges. Now for the moment of truth, applying the veneer. So I'm going to pop that on there. Okay, and then I'm going to push, working from the middle out. And now to go round and let these down. That's how it's looking now that I've used every clamp I own and every heavy object in the workshop. So fingers crossed. I have a feeling there might be some bubbling, but we'll deal with that once it's dry. And if I thought I was a hot mess before, I really am now. So we're gonna leave that for 24 hours and let it do its thing. Okay, it is the moment of truth time to find out whether that worked or not. And if not, how bad is it? So I need to get all of that weight off there, and I've left that, what are we on today? Just over 48 hours, so 2 days. So let me get on with getting everything off and then we can reveal. Okay, before I lift the plywood off, comment down below, worked or not worked. Let me know what you think. Right, let's bring you in and then you can join me for the reveal. Let's make sure you've got a good viewing angle. There you go, how's that? Okay, I don't want to look. I'm gonna close my eyes. I'm gonna close my eyes. Okay, tell me, is it good, bad? Am I gonna cry? Should I open my eyes? Okay. Okay. Okay, not mad. Not mad. There's some wrinkling there, which I thought might be the case. So I've got a plan for that. Okay, not mad. I think what I'm gonna do, right, I do have a plan for this. So I have my trusty iron and I've got it on max, and my plan is to just heat up that glue underneath by not pushing too hard and just gliding it over. And then once I've warmed that section up, then I'm going to apply the pressure. And those wrinkles are flat. Okay, moving on. Now I'm going to work on this section. So just running it over initially, not much pressure, warming up that glue underneath. Once that glue is warm, then applying more pressure, moving slowly and flattening. Now this side had a few more wrinkles, so warming up that glue. And then going in with the pressure right up to the edge. So I'm just going to keep working my way around doing that. Try and get you in a bit closer so you can really see how those wrinkles flatten. There we go. That's a good viewpoint. Okay, so warming up, not much pressure. And now I'll start applying the pressure and just moving in lots of different directions to push out the wrinkles. So I don't know if you can tell, but those wrinkles that were there are now flat. So I'm going to leave that to cool. Much better. That's looking really nice and smooth now. So I'm just going to pop this on the top again, just as a bit of weight, and add some of these back on. Okay, and I'm just going to leave that for an hour or two just as that glue cools down. There we go. That is looking really good. So now what I want to do is get some sandpaper and run it along these edges. This is 120 grit because this veneer is quite thick, and work my way along. I'm not going to throw these veneer scraps away. I am going to hang on to them. Now that's got a funny curve there. I can refine the edge in a bit. At this point, I'm just trying to get the veneer off the excess pieces. I'm going to try with a blade as well and see. So what I ended up doing was using the blade to cut most of the excess off, and then coming in with 120 grit sandpaper just to get that smooth finish. There are a couple of places, like over here, where the veneer hasn't stuck. So I'm just going to take some wood glue and spot repair those areas. I'm not going to show you any more because I think that's going to ruin the surprise. So In the next clips, you will see the final reveal. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a bit long, but there was so much involved. So thank you for sticking with me if you've made it to the end. And I hope you like the final reveal, and my client is absolutely delighted with it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.